I first want to tell you how embarrassed I was when Kathy called me about this. And I'm glad she gave me a month or so to sort of have it settled. Because, it's something I never ever thought I never even thought of it. You know how it is. So I'll start with the thank yous. And I want to thank my council, St. Thomas More, who I've been a member of for about 8 years now. And I really haven't been active in their council because, I can't do a lot of stuff standing out. And they have a lot of young people, and they do all kinds of things. And so I do really want to thank them for that. And especially Nancy Yatskov and Jan Dunnigan and Annette Patterson, who I found out did all the research and put that together. And it's pretty accurate, I think, so thank you for doing that. And I want to thank, of course, the Alberta Mackenzie Provincial Council for accepting that nomination. Now, I know when it arrived, I had a little bit of pull, I guess, because my president of St. Thomas More is Dorothy Johansson. And my parish priest is the provincial director. So, it's lucky I didn't know him before. Anyways. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit. You've given quite a bit of my history, so I thought I'd sort of share some stories with you. So the League has always been my extended family. It always was and still is my priority behind my family myself. Now, I don't have any of my family members here tonight, as we have planned a family gathering in Banff this week. Both my son Doug and my daughter Colleen, they're both in their 50s, and they still play ball hockey. And they're part of teams that are vying for the World Championship in ball hockey being held in Banff this weekend. So I have to choose. So my husband is spending our 56th wedding anniversary, which is today. And I share that with Lynn. Is she here? No? Okay, so I just, so anyways, so he's there by himself, and the rest of the family, they're all in Banff, and I'm here. So how's that for family togetherness? So why did I make this choice? I believe the Catholic Women's League was responsible in helping me to grow and to develop, to be aware of what's happening outside of my little world, to participate in all kinds of activities, to share and to learn. It has been my adult education. And so it was important that I come to accept this award and be a witness to what CWL means to women of faith. It was suggested that I talk about my CWL journey. That would have taken an hour or more, so I'll just give you a few highlights. In 1967, I was asked to assist with publicity for the Edmonton Diocesan Council's project at the time, Centennial Villa. I accepted. I had served the year before on the provincial CWL Council as a sub-convener of communications. Actually, I just did the publicity for the provincial convention. And that's when I first met Elsie Yanik. And I want to also tell you that at that time, the provincial council had 14,000 members. Wow. Accepting the Centennial Villa job, I found out that I was now communications on this other council. I had served as parish council president at St. Edmunds, and you know how that happens, you attend a few meetings and the first thing you know, you're in the chair. So I had no idea about these other levels, and I had lots to learn. And I'm telling you, I learned fast, because right after my appointment was announced, the council from Fort Saskatchewan asked me if I would come and talk to them at their wind-up banquet in June. Well, here I was again. And what did they want me to talk about? Well, communications, of course. I didn't know a thing about communications. But I had been handed a box. I went through that stuff like you would not believe. I read everything. Be damned the housework. I had the experience of working with the media, but not much else, and certainly nothing about league activities. Sleepless nights followed. I had never spoken to a group. You can't call chairing a CWL council meeting a talk. And I practiced in front of my dog. Who else would sit there and listen to me? I guess I did okay because Fort Saskatchewan members did not throw me out and they didn't boo me. Actually, they even gave me a gift. Now that was a surprise. Nobody had told me to expect that. I have since received many gifts over the years, and some I still have. The food and flowers, of course, are gone. This is when I started attending meetings outside of my parish council. I enjoyed the weekends away, and though we did not have much money, Ron was apprenticing at the time, we were able to afford it because it meant 4 of us would share the one bed in the hotel room. One mattress on the floor and the others on the box spring. And I use the term sleep very loosely here because we talk all night long. In fact, I always came home on Sundays exhausted. But I got to know my sisters in the league. The Diocesan Council during those years was very involved in working with others in the city through what we called civic action. This committee is now Zone 9. I went from one thing to another. What a learning experience. I was meeting women from all over the city. I found out how naive I was. And I was getting out of the house. Now that might be hard for younger members today to visualize as a positive thing. But we were stay-at-home moms. And we didn't get to talk to adults too often, you know. And it meant that I left the kids and the house to Dad and got out into the community. Now you know that there isn't one of us that can do what we do without the help of our family. I learned about community needs, education, health and social services, and the needy people in our city. I learned about all the charities that were assisting them and how church women were really the benefactors and volunteers living out their Christian faith. I learned that it was part of being a Catholic woman, and I met and worked with women from other religions. I actually never had a friend at that time that was not Catholic. And I picked up some skills. I learned how to be part of a team. I learned how to research and plan. I learned what expectations of being a board or committee member and about fundraising. But even as important, my husband learned to prepare supper, clean the kitchen, get the kids to bed, take the dog for a walk, and mind the house. And my kids became more independent. Because of my membership in the Catholic Women's League, I got involved in the women's shelter movement. The food bank, the Marian Center, Catholic Social Services. I became a member of the provincial government's advisory committee on the family, and much, much more. At last count, I've been a member of 23 boards or special project committees. The CWL had and continues to have great speakers talking about the issues of the day. I sort of woke up and realized that I had to get involved and become vocal. And you know as well as I do that I continue to speak up. As I progressed through the various convenerships and then on to provincial council, every second year was another learning curve. Yes, it took time to go through that box of material handed to me after each election, and yes, I did go through it. I also learned how to clean that darn box out, and how to keep only what was important and relevant. Actually, I got really good at it. This skill has helped me in downsizing at home. I now recycle or chuck it. Just think, before you joined the league, how many of you ever heard of minutes? never mind taking them. What about financial reports that were more complicated than our checkbook or that scribbler at the CWL Council? How about preparing a talk of many subjects and the overwhelming work to put together a workshop? And even more, what about resolutions? Or meeting with governments to discuss the resolutions? And on top of that, think of how many of us have been involved in convening a zone, diocesan, or a convention. Think again of what we all learned. Would that training have happened anywhere else? I don't think so. One of the highlights of CWL service is visiting the towns and cities in our diocese, our province, and throughout Canada, attending meetings and conventions, giving workshops and leadership training. I learned about our country. I have traveled from Newfoundland to the US border, to Vancouver Island, and drove up the frozen Mackenzie River to Tuktoyaktuk. And yes, there are street lights on the river and directional signs. So that was a real gift for me. I've had experiences that would fill a book. As provincial president in 1984, I happened to be in the right place at the right time for our first provincial CWL convention held in the Northwest Territories, and the visit to Canada and Edmonton of Pope John Paul. The convention up north became a tour. 2 plane loads, that's 234 people, were organized to travel to Yellowknife. Irene Kudelik, the Mackenzie Diocesan President, was invaluable as she handled all the northern arrangements. We were ready to go the week before, on the front page of the Edmonton Journal was a picture of our plane on the tarmac at Calgary, in flames. Panic time. But we worked with Ward Air, and using one plane twice, the convention went off as planned. All the arrangements were made without the use of email, cell phones, and I think those smartphones, is that what they're called? Long-distance calls were very expensive. We communicated using pen and paper and a walk to the local mailbox. But our members were resilient and just went along with the new last-minute plans. It was a great trip with many experiences. For some reason, we learned on our bus tour from Yellowknife to Hay River to Fort Smith how to identify a male in those darn black flies and huge mosquitoes. Now, CWL leader provides us with information of absolutely no value to anybody. Now, the papal visit, of course, was the highlight of my career, my life. It opened up an opportunity, though, for all of us to work together, and every single council participated. We made wonderful banners lining the paper route and the Mass site. That was a wonderful project. I think back to all the wonderful people I have met and been associated with. The highlight for me, as mentioned, was with St. Pope John Paul II, doing a reading of the Mass in Edmonton and receiving communion from a future saint. I also received a handwritten note from Blessed Mother Teresa, thanking the CWL members for our financial support of her work. And I call on those two all the time to answer my prayer requests, and I don't allow them off the hook. And you know what? They answer. Traveling our country, I've had many adventures. Getting lost was just part of the game. I learned not to rely on directions from rural people. I seem to always miss the specific landmark they talked about. In Friday's journal, John Ivison wrote, and I quote, "If you get lost on the road, God allows U-turns." And we made many of those, and I also learned to buy maps. We usually traveled 3 or 4 of us together. There was strength in numbers, and we shared the costs. So once we discovered we had to change our route 2 would be watching for cops. 1 would be desperately praying. And the driver, often me, ignoring the speed limit, drove. Once while presenting a workshop in New Brunswick, we decided to go for supper a few miles out. Well, the tide went out and the ferry was stuck on the other side. Our workshop was in an hour. One of the fishermen with a boat, and there's a little bit of water there, took us across and had somebody arranged for somebody to meet us and drive us to the church. The rental car was rescued by one of the members' husband when the tide came back in. So I learned a lot about oceans. After all, I was born and raised in Edmonton. Who knew about these things? I remember a trip from Hay River to High Level in a rental car to catch our plane to Edmonton, stopping at Indian cabins, exactly as it sounds. For a bite to eat, we waited in a panic for nearly an hour to get bacon and tomato sandwiches. We were presented with 1 sandwich, and now thirsty and hungry and very late, we did our regular routine. We just made that plane, which was on the tarmac. I can't believe it when people say there is no God. I am proof there is one, even when I'm breaking the law. At a diocesan convention banquet, a storm prevented the Archbishop from reaching Hinton. Some of you will remember this one. With an hour's notice, I was under Archbishop of Edmonton. On my copy of the program, I changed the name to Rosemary McCarthy, did not cross out Archbishop of Edmonton, and I deposited it at the Provincial Archives of Alberta. I chuckle when I think of what some researcher years down the road will say when he reads that. The grandmothers of Argentina were one of our projects. Nora and Haiti, 2 of the marching women, were our guests in 1985 at our convention banquet. Years later, when I traveled to Argentina, I visited their plaza and I talked to a couple of grandmothers who were still marching daily in protest about their missing grandchildren. Our speakers in those days, as they are today, included politicians and priests and nuns and others involved in education, health, and social services. But the highlights were always our fellow sisters in the League. I have many good friends amongst our CWO members. We share the same values, faith, and community, and we share openly. I have been a part of a group of 6 life members: Artis Brodray, Natalie Carley, Mary Ann Warren, Connie McBride, and Mary Lou Weekend. We have been meeting monthly for years, usually working on a CWL project. Since 2014, we continue to meet about every second month. And with no specific project to work on now, what do we talk about? Well, CWL, of course. So I especially want to thank those 5 for being with me all that time. As secretary for the Diocesan Council in 1971, I had 120 councils on my list. The AB Dick machine, for those of you who are younger, is a copying machine with a drum filled with ink. You crank the machine by hand. You've got some muscles. A stencil, which you perforated with typing, was the master copy, and it was hard to make corrections. Sometimes the sentences just didn't quite make sense, but what I typed is what you got. We have come a long way since then, and I have had to adapt and learn as technology took over our life. And the learning continues, and I haven't even tried the smartphones yet. Elsie Yanik was always promoting and assisting her diocese, so she and I met many times at our meetings. One time I discovered that her husband had a fishing and hunting lodge business. So through Elsie, I made arrangements for my father and brothers to spend 3 days at their lodge. They flew to Fort Chipewyan as directed, were met, and then, surprise, guys flown by a float plane to the lodge in the middle of nowhere to be picked up in 3 days' time. Lawrence Yanik had to open the lodge since it had not been used over the winter. He spent an hour orienting my family to the area. There was no electricity, and of course no phone. It was just a cabin with a wood stove and a plane which just took off. When they did not return on Monday night, we in Edmonton were worried. How to find out? The Yaniks could not be reached by phone. Everything was done by mail. My mom and siblings were all in a panic, and we soon found out that my dad and brothers were in the same state. They had prepared food for only 3 days and had taken only Monday off work, and no plane in sight. 2 days later, the plane did arrive. Lawrence had got busy on the trap line and had forgotten about them. Did they ever try this again? No. And I've tried to keep my nose out of future fishing and hunting trips. So I want you to know that I really appreciate knowing that I have not been forgotten by my League sisters. We are women who have a long history, especially here in the Edmonton area. We were into everything, but somehow I believe that focus has been lost. Not sure if it is for the best or not, but I do know we continue to work for God in our country. My concern is that we don't promote ourselves. Here's that word communication again. Who knows what we do? Honoring our members with an award such as the Elsie Award is communicating about our organization and our commitment and honoring women from our past. So you see, I didn't do anything extraordinary. I certainly got much more than what I gave, which is why I'm very honored to receive the Elsie Award. Thank you again.